barrel from scratch. Modeling it in Blender, that's roughly 90 centimeters. Now I'm going to delete one edge of the plane. We'll add a screw modifier. Boom! That should smooth things out nicely. We'll turn that value up to 1. We'll start by selecting the edge loop. Next, we'll add some detail to the top of the cap. Use Ctrl+R. Don't forget to set the crease and bevel weight for the cap's sharp edges to complete the look. I want a dented look, not a destroyed one. Yeah, it's actually better if it doesn't completely envelope the whole high poly mesh. Like this barrel is just a static prop. I continue in marking seams in place that knot will be visible. I'm going to make mine 4096. We're good to move on. Welcome back. In the first part of our game asset series, we focused entirely on the modeling of our red barrel, laying the foundation for what's to come. Now we're taking it to the next level with Substance Painter. Get ready to unleash your creativity as we dive deep into texturing, adding realistic wear, tear, and that iconic red finish. Let's get started on part 2, red barrel texturing in Substance Painter. Alright, here we are inside of Substance Painter. First things first, I need to import the barrel mesh that I exported yesterday, the one with _low at the end. That will become my base mesh to work with. Alright, let's get started. Go to File, click on New, or press Ctrl+N to start a new Substance Painter file. In the New Project dialog box, click on Select. This will open another dialog box where you can search for your base mesh. Now click on Barrel_Low. Now in the Project Settings section, you'll see Document Resolution. This determines how large your texture resolution will be. 1024 by 1024, 2048 by 2048, and so on. Keep in mind that the resolution you choose will impact performance, so it really depends on your hardware. You can always change this later. Personally, I usually work at 2048 or even 1024 for most of the texturing process, and then bump it up to 4096 on export for the final highest quality result. And the normal map format is where you choose the type of normal map you're using, DirectX or OpenGL. I usually choose DirectX since I'm primarily using Unreal Engine for my game projects. However, if I want to preview the textures accurately in Blender, I'd need OpenGL. While Blender can preview DirectX normal maps correctly, it requires a bit of tinkering in the shader editor. Okay, with that covered, we can leave the other settings unchecked. We've already tackled all those aspects in Blender during part 1 of this series. Just hit OK, and wait for the computer to do its computing. There, it's loaded my barrel mesh. Now let's go to the bake settings. You can find them by clicking the little Texture Set Settings icon, which looks like a document with a wrench. Or you can use the shortcut, Ctrl+Shift+B. That's quite daunting, isn't it? Lots of buttons, sliders, and checklists. Not to worry, I'll guide you through it. First, at the top, in the drop-down menu, you'll see the output size. This controls the resolution of the baked maps. In my current version of Substance Painter, it goes up to 8K. I believe newer versions may be capable of even higher resolutions, if I'm not mistaken. The checklist on the left allows you to choose which maps you want to bake. That includes the normal map, world space normal map, ID map, ambient occlusion map, curvature map, position map, and thickness map. The one I want is over here, in the high definition meshes section. Click the little icon on the top right to add my high poly mesh, and navigate to where I saved my barrel_high and open it. Now let's click on the normal map in the mesh map list. I usually test the settings with just the normal map for the first bake to see if everything is correct, especially the ray distance. If the settings are wrong, the normal map will look messed up, and that's a clear sign we need to adjust them. The anti-aliasing setting controls how smooth the baked result is. Higher numbers produce smoother maps, but personally, I don't see a noticeable difference beyond a value of 4. Beneath that is the matching setting. Always choose by mesh name. And below that you have the suffix setting. That's why in the first part, one named my meshes with _low using a capital L and _high using a capital H. If the capitalization is different or there's a typo, it won't work. Substance Painter won't be able to match the meshes. Let's set the anti-aliasing to 4 and set the output size to 2048. Leave the frontal distance and rear distance at their default values and go ahead and click Bake Selected Textures to see the results. I don't see any faulty bakes with the default values. Generally, the more complicated the mesh, the more tinkering is needed. Okay, let's bump up the resolution and turn on all the mesh maps. Let's see. What else? I think we're good. Hit Bake Selected Textures. It's going to take a little while. I'll skip ahead to when it's finished baking. As you can see, the baking has finished. You can see it as you roll your light shift plus right mouse button and drag over the object. It imitates the high poly one. There is no need for baking anymore. Now we are ready to start texturing. If you're new to Substance Painter, think of it like Photoshop, but for 3D objects. You can add color, and then use masks to target specific parts of your model. Then, you can add another color, mask that one, change the colors, and adjust the blending modes to achieve the exact look you want. You can add as many layers as you want, even add painting layers if you want to add a hand-painted style to your model. I'm not going to do that here. My workflow primarily uses smart materials. These are pre-made materials, and Substance Painter has many built-in smart materials that you can tweak the colors and other properties of. I also create and save my own smart materials for repeated use. It saves me time. For instance, if we take a look at this blue metal material, you can see it's a complex setup with multiple layers, blending modes, and adjustments. It has all the blending layers already built into it. You can change every single aspect of it, from the base color to the roughness and metallic properties. But of course, I'm not going to use that. I'm making a red barrel, not a pristine blue one. We need something more fitting for our project. Let's look again. Browse through the smart materials and find something more suitable for a weathered red barrel, perhaps with some rust, dirt, and grime to give it that realistic worn look. I like this painted steel-worn smart material. I like the old vibes it gives off. It has all the elements I need. The only thing lacking is the rust aspect. It looks a bit unappealing. No worries, I can fix it by adding my own mask to it, making it easier on the eyes. Here I'm deleting the default mask and adding a smart mask. I'm clicking the Add Smart Mask icon in the Smart Masks tab section, which is next to the Smart Materials tab. It has a lot of types of masks, like dust, edge, occlusion, etc. The one I want is rust. It's still not seamless. I can fix that by adding a paint layer directly above the smart mask I've applied, and then manually painting adjustments. To achieve a more natural textured look, I'll search for a random brush, avoiding the uniformity of a simple rounded brush. Setting the brush flow to approximately 70% will provide better control over the paint application. I'll use white to add more mask, effectively increasing the rust effect, and black to subtract from the mask, essentially scratching away the rust where it appears too dense or unnatural. By strategically using black to refine the rust distribution and white to enhance it where needed, I can create a more organic and visually appealing result. After I'm done with masking the rust, I'll add a paint layer above the main color of the metal. I'll do this by clicking Add Paint Layer, setting the blend mode to Pass Through, and then giving that layer an effect. I'll right-click to add an effect and look for HSL. I can change the color that way, so I don't have to change the color in the main metal. It's a hassle if you have to change colors that involve a lot of color variations. I'll also saturate it a bit. I find that in game engines, objects with unsaturated colors tend not to blend well with the environment. However, that really depends on the style you're going for. Since I'm a prop guy for a horror game, I always have dark and saturated environments. For the cap, I've decided to introduce a visual contrast by using a different metal material. Specifically, I'm opting for a bare metal finish, but I'll be adding layers of dirt and dust to give it a weathered and realistic appearance. This deliberate choice is aimed at breaking up the uniformity of the barrel's surface. By incorporating a distinct material and texture on the cap, I'm adding subtle variations that enhance the overall visual interest and believability of the prop. This approach not only adds depth, but also contributes to a more compelling narrative through the object's visual storytelling. For the side decal on this prop, I've encountered a limitation within Substance Painter. Unfortunately, the specific danger flammable liquid sign I'm envisioning isn't available in its default decal library. However, there is a flame decal, which is a related but not exact match. To overcome this, I'll need to create the desired decal in an external image manipulation program. This could be accomplished using software like Photoshop, GIMP, or any similar application that allows for precise image editing. The key requirement is to ensure the decal's aspect ratio is 1:1, meaning it's a perfect square. The resolution, whether 512 by 512 pixels or higher, is flexible and depends on the desired level of detail. By creating this custom decal, I can accurately represent the intended warning and enhance the prop's realism. I've created this flammable liquid sign in Canva and exported it as a PNG. To import it correctly, I'll drag and drop it into the Tools window within Substance Painter. It's crucial to drag it into the Tools window and not the 3D or 2D viewers, otherwise the import will fail. In the import dialog, I'll set the PNG as a texture. When choosing where to import the resources, there are three options. 1. Import to current session. This means the PNG will only be available during the current Substance Painter session. Once I close the program, the PNG will no longer be accessible. 2. Import to the saved file. This option ensures the PNG is always available for this specific file. However, importing multiple high-resolution masks this way will increase the file size. 3. Import to Substance Painter itself. This makes the PNG permanently available regardless of which Substance Painter file I open. Now that the PNG is in Substance Painter, I'm aiming to create a large stripe decal with the gasoline image appearing as a negative within that stripe. To ensure it integrates seamlessly with the existing texture and adds believability, I'll place the decal layer below the rust grime layer. This positioning allows the grime and rust to interact naturally with the decal, creating a more cohesive and realistic appearance. I add a fill layer, give it a white color, then add a fill mask, ensuring it's completely white and that repetition is turned off to prevent tiling. I then resize the mask in the 2D viewer into a rectangular shape and position it where I envision the large stripe decal to be. After evaluating this design, I've concluded that a simple rectangular stripe is insufficient. To enhance its visual appeal, I add another fill mask with identical settings, but I set its blend mode to subtract. This will create a decal design featuring a large stripe with a smaller, subtracted stripe. If I repeat this process on the top part of the decal, it will result in a quite pleasing aesthetic. Then, I carefully adjust the color, toning down the stark white to a slightly warmer, more muted shade. This subtle change is crucial for achieving a harmonious blend with the barrel's primary color. By avoiding an overly bright white, I prevent the decal from appearing artificially pasted on, and instead create a more integrated and believable visual. I create another fill mask and then drag the gasoline image into the color slot of that mask. This allows the black and white values of the gasoline image to dictate the visibility of the mask. I then change the blend mode to subtract, resize it in the 2D viewer, and place it over the stripe. This is what happens if I forget to turn off repetition. The image tiles across the map. To add a final touch, I incorporate the flame decal from earlier. I create another fill mask, drag the flame image into the color slot, disable tiling, change the blend mode to add to prevent it from obscuring the underlying masks, and then position and resize it appropriately. Then, I group the decal elements and apply a fill mask to the entire group. I choose a grunge texture to add a final layer of wear and tear to the decal as a whole. Now, to refine the overall appearance of the decal, I meticulously adjust the balance and contrast of the grunge mask. This fine-tuning process allows me to control the intensity and distribution of the wear and tear, ensuring it aligns with the desired level of realism. Furthermore, I engage in a dynamic exploration of the grunge texture within the 2D viewer. By strategically repositioning and scaling the texture, I aim to discover compelling grunge patterns that enhance the visual narrative of the decal. This iterative process of adjustment and experimentation is crucial for achieving a nuanced and believable weathered effect. With this barrel complete, it's worth noting that the procedural workflow employed will be replicated for the second barrel. As the underlying principles remain consistent, I'll streamline the demonstration by skipping ahead to the finished product. After all of that's done, I export the texture maps for Unreal Engine usage. I'm not going to fully explain how I created the export preset for UE. I'll go to File, then Export Textures, and in the resolution settings I'll set it to my desired resolution, which is 4096. I'll set the padding to 2 pixels with the base color. The maps that will be exported from Substance Painter are configurable. My chosen export configuration includes base color, an MRAO mask, a combination of roughness, metallic, and ambient occlusion, and 2 normal maps, DirectX for Unreal Engine usage and OpenGL for previewing in Blender. All maps will be exported as PNG files. After all settings are configured, I'll hit Export. I will then show you how I preview these textures in Blender. Here we are back in Blender to preview the textures from Substance Painter. Click on the low barrel, delete the old material, and create a new one. Go to the Shader Editor. In the Shader Editor, press Shift+A to add multiple texture nodes. Navigate to the exported textures, select the Albedo, MRAO, and OpenGL normal maps and click Import. Now for this to work, make sure to set the color space of the MRAO and the normal maps to non-color. I'll start with the MRAO map. I need to separate the RGB channels. I press Shift+A, locate Separate Color in the Converter section, and click it. I plug the MRAO map into the input of the Separate Color node. Then, I plug the R channel into the metallic input of the BSDF, and the G channel into the roughness input. For the B channel, which is the ambient occlusion, AO, I need to mix it with the albedo map. I add a mix color node, plug the output of that node into the BSDF's base color input, then plug the albedo map into the A slot, and the B output of the separate color node into the B slot. I change the mix mode to multiply, and crank up the factor to 1. If you slide the factor up and down, it's clear to see the difference between having no AO and having AO. As for the normal maps, it's as simple as adding a normal map node from the vector section, and plugging the normal map texture into the normal map node, and then plugging that node into the normal input of the BSDF shader. That officially brings us to the end of this tutorial in the Game Asset series. I hope you've enjoyed seeing my process for creating this red barrel and that you've picked up some useful techniques along the way. Remember, your support is crucial. Please be sure to hit that like button, share this video with anyone you think might find it helpful, and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel. Your subscriptions are what allow me to keep creating these tutorials and share my personal experiences as a 3D prop guy. I'm always looking to bring you more content, so stay tuned for the next episode of the Game Asset series. I'll be seeing you then. Crazy signing off, and keep on blending.